Quack! 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 Quack!
Quack! I'm not ready. Quack! Quack! Quack!
Quack.
Quack!
12 in.
Quack!
Oh! I am your host, Adam Jamel.
And I'm Aaron C. Schroeder.
That is right. And this is the Quack 12 podcast, the most official, unofficial Oregon Ducks sporting podcast on the web. Footosphere. Aaron, we are 8-0, 4 away from being 12-0, which the legend foretold so many years ago.
I mean, it's weird. Okay. We were talking about this off mic.
Yes, we were.
But I'm going to bring it up on mic.
Okay.
Only in a small reference. But anyway, it makes more sense when you're in a space called the Pac-12 with 12 teams that play 12 games a year. Love it. Makes sense. Nice. Solid. Everything works out. No leftovers. But now we got like 18 teams?
18 freaking teams.
12 games, which means there's 5 teams out there that I know we're better than.
Yeah.
But we don't get to prove it.
Yep. Indiana.
And to boot, they decide who's 1 and 2 in this place based off of the alphabet? Come on.
Yep, it's true. Yeah, Indiana, top of the standings right now.
Are they still undefeated as well?
Still undefeated, still ranked number 13, which I'm like, they're 8-0 in the Big
Yeah,
Ten.
but they've
Come
had a
on.
really soft season. They got really zero issues, especially when you got Notre Dame's coming out and making Navy look atrocious. Am
Look
I doing
at
good?
you talking about holy hell. That just sounded real. Especially when you got Notre Dame. I love that. That's so good. Oh my God, who the fuck am I talking to?
I don't know.
Day, is that you? Day? Okay, time to end this podcast. Oh man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get little clips here and there.
It was great. My man, I'll tell you, I've said this before, but it really looks like things are lining up for the Ducks. Knock on wood, but maybe I don't even fucking need to knock on wood because Oregon, number 1 in the country, looking like the number 1 team in the country. When you look at all these, typical powerhouses, Michigan, I mean, we're playing them this next week. Maybe this will blow up in my face, but looks like absolute donkey doo-doo. Ohio State really struggled against Nebraska this last Saturday, like almost lost to Nebraska. Penn State, I mean, they're undefeated. We'll see if they play against Ohio State this Saturday, so that'll determine a lot. But then you got
doesn't make any sense. They should not be undefeated.
No, they look strange. I'll tell. I mean, who knows if we'll play them this season, but yeah. They look like at least a top tier team, but maybe the bottom of the top tier. But then you got Aaron, you got teams like Alabama. Alabama, flawed, already taken 2 losses, may not even make the playoffs. Georgia.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Kalen DeBoer over there. Georgia, 1 loss already, 1 more loss. I mean, it'd be hard, but it's possible they don't make it. Like the winner of the SEC is making it, but yeah.
How's Austin doing? How's my Horns?
Texas Longhorns, funny enough, they went against Vanderbilt, which is like basically the Stanford of the East Coast. All right. They're the nerds. Really good school. Vanderbilt is the one that upset Alabama in that huge historic win. Right.
Right. I remember that.
So now they took on, it was Texas versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, it was a game against Texas. Like they probably shouldn't have been, but like it was within one score in the fourth quarter for multiple scenarios. Because Vanderbilt's plucky. And because Texas is maybe a little bit fraudulent. They have one loss against Georgia right now.
Okay. Well, we've now brought up Penn State is maybe looking a little fraudulent, and maybe Longhorns now looking a little fraudulent.
Mm-hmm. Like,
what do you think about Dylan Gabriel throwing an interception in this game?
Oh, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think I'm no longer fine with it.
Oh!
Can I have my hot take here?
Have the floor. Floor's yours.
Consistently showing that he is willing to throw a ball to the other team in games where I don't really care about it because we're going to annihilate this team.
Yeah.
What I don't like about it is that same interception against a team in the playoffs is a return for points. And that is like game 3 now where he has thrown a pick to a place where he should have not been throwing.
Yeah.
In a game he didn't need to. He didn't even need to throw in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what happens in baseball, baby? 3 times you're out. I'm sorry. I gotta say
he's got to be benched now.
Well, no. Dear God, no. But for sure, if they bring up the word Heisman and him, I'll be like, come on.
I mean, he's a leader for that. It shows how fraudulent the Heisman Trophy is because they're just looking.
This is the fraudulent episode. It's spooky.
Yeah, frauds everywhere. Fraudulent Friday. It's not Friday, but
speaking. I went to the Trump rally at New York City.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Filled with frauds.
You're like, all you guys are frauds. You don't love Trump as much as I do. That's right. This is the final episode of the Quack 12 where we get canceled. You find out we're secret Trumpers the whole time. Anyways, Aaron. What I mean to say is a lot of these blue bloods, a lot of these people that you assume to be the top tier are looking, at least not like Death Star ready. And about these interceptions, I do think it's pretty interesting. Like, if you're looking overall, like, he hasn't thrown a disgusting amount of interceptions. Like, I don't know what the number is.
He's thrown 4 over 3 games that I'm pretty sure have been in a row.
Well, yeah.
He might have skipped
not in a row
game where he didn't throw an interception.
Well, Aaron, this is the thing. This is why I'm excited. The game where he didn't throw an interception, against Ohio State. When it's matter. And the other thing is, when these interceptions are coming, they're pretty like, oh boy, that's rough. But a lot of them are coming in the second halves. The games are already a blowout, or against UCLA. Yeah, it was unfortunate, but it was a pick 6 right before the half, but we were still up like crazy. Like, I'm not saying they're good, but I'm hoping that what these really are is he's losing maybe a little bit of focus. Maybe he's being like,
that sounds horrible.
I think he's losing focus because he's like, this game's fucking over though. Like, and this game's against an opponent that's just like, outclassed. Is it good?
Achilles had a heel, and look where it got him.
That's true.
Now, Vin, I think you might be onto something there. Actually, you have talked me off the ledge. Maybe I don't like the idea of it's him feeling comfortable.
I think it is.
Or bored.
Yeah.
I hope it's bored.
Were you not bored in the second half of this game, Aaron?
Brother, I was bored in the second quarter of this game. This game started and was over, and I just was on TikTok looking over to make sure, everything's right as rain over there.
Once we were up, I mean, honestly, you could say, like, I forget if it was 21-3 probably, but like 21-3, you could make an argument that it was garbage time because this Illinois team, and this is what I want to say really quick, is the reason why these interceptions aren't really like a thing to me is because if we were a team where it's like our offense is the main thing and our defense can show up occasionally and hopefully we can just outscore everyone by 70 points, we are not like, we don't have to be that team because we're not that team. Because our defense is legit, man.
Yeah.
Our defense is freaking good. You can lean on this defense.
I mean, our defense is so good, it makes the offense look like a team that proactively is trying to stack as many points on top of you as they can. Where in reality, it's like, no. We're scoring at a good, we have a steady clip, but we're not crazy here.
Purdue,
it's just, you never get to go more than 7 plays.
No. Against Purdue and against Illinois. In the second half, it was definitely like the scoring kind of stopped. And I really feel like it is Will Stein and Lanning and just the whole Oregon team being like, we have is almost, I mean, not really, you can never say never, but basically an insurmountable lead. For the opponent we're going against, this is an insurmountable lead.
Yes.
Like if we're being real. And so now, like, let's literally start playing a little more vanilla, which isn't good for, like, like it's always good to be 100% intensity. And I'm sure these players are still giving it their all. But, like, play calling wise, I feel like it's like we don't have to be as aggressive. We're still going downfield. So maybe you're right. But
here's what I will say. Hey, right. Maybe the interception, because we learned him doing that weird clock maneuver thing with the too many men on the field.
Yeah.
And then they changed the rule on us, dicks. Maybe in some realm, what he's actually doing by throwing, he's like, throw an interception. I want to see how our offensive line can handle a run back, right? Like, maybe that's where he's at. Maybe that's where we're at. It's like, we've got this game in the bag. And so let's just see how our offensive line can handle a scenario in which the other team snags one off of us.
So you think it's like in that UCLA game when we were up and then he threw that pick six. He's like, Dylan Gabriel, my boy, come over here. I want you to throw a pick six because I want to make sure Cornelius, our tackle here, I want him to practice tackling, living up to his name. I want to make sure he can tackle a defensive back, and this will be good for us in the long run.
It'll be that day. He didn't ask Dylan Gabriel for pick six. He asked for give that guy the ball so we can test our guy in a worst case scenario situation, because those are the situations that will always show up when you are winning a national championship.
I mean, I'll tell you this, dude. I definitely think it's a little bit of like, once we get these huge leads, these insurmountable leads for the opponents we're going against, I do think there's a bit of like, I mean, if we throw a pick, it's like, cool, our defense is out there and they've answered the call in many of these situations. I mean, there was like, if there wasn't that Harmon, like he shouldn't have thrown the quarterback to the ground like that. And that led to their only touchdown.
Right.
Like, the game could be even different than that. And speaking on that, Aaron, I want this to be the crux of the entire episode. I want to keep circling back to this. These Big Ten refs are completely against us. I really want to get into the reffing. I want to get into their decisions, and I want to get into what we believe is their personal grudges against us. Once again, there was a turnover that was not even looked at. There was that fumble that we should have gotten, And so I wanted to bring on an expert to specifically, talk about what he believes these cheating ass refs are doing, what the payoff is. He's an expert in the field. From Addicted to Quack, I've got Hithliday 1. How's it going, Hithliday?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
We're furious.
We're furious at these.
Number one, these refs are coming for our necks.
We know how you feel about them, yeah.
And number two, Hithliday, the thing that you're really upset about, there's a lady ref.
Yeah,
Wow.
we know you're really pissed
Which
off of that.
I'm fine with, but
we're
Hithloday
fine with
for
yeah.
sure.
Off record, Hithloday has been really adamant about that needs to
I'm
stop.
just kidding. That's all
I'm
jokes.
against that. I know I've heard him say this for real, but Hithloday, how you doing?
Again, I am well. First of all, she's not a referee; she's the center judge. And second of all, her name's Amanda Sauer, and her story is incredible. Like you look it up. Her,
Badass.
We're for her. We're for her. We are.
Yes.
Aaron and
she's her personal story and journey to being in the position that she's at is absolutely remarkable and inspiring.
Which is why I'm more mad that she's taking money on the side.
Yeah.
I can't comment on that. I don't know. Like if I had to come up with a theory behind anything, I don't really think there is a theory. I just think that refs are human and humans make mistakes.
Yeah.
But if I had to come up with a theory like that, that is borne out in the data, like what you basically see, when you look at just a broad sweep, and I'm not talking about Oregon here. I mean, like if you take like 20 years of officiating data and then what you compare is to like the SRS rankings, and you look at just like holding fouls, is that basically the better the team is, the fewer holding fouls the opposing offensive lines are called for. And it basically suggests that like refs don't, it's like, hey, you're already kicking their butt. We don't need to give a 10-yard,
It's the same
if we make this 1st and 20, this game's going to turn into a crazy
it's the same
blowout.
reason NBA stars don't get called for traveling.
I mean,
no, it's the opposite reason of that. It's the other way around. It's the like, if this team, if the underdog, if the team that's getting killed and is committing holding, to keep their quarterback from getting slaughtered, if we actually call that hold and now it's like 2nd and 24, now the quarterback really is going to get murdered.
Right.
That's true.
But now, of course, that's not proof of anything. It's just, man, when like everybody who does this project, like they pull like 20 years, like it's been done by a bunch of different, like Michigan fans will do it, Alabama fans will do it, like any fan who's a stats based fan of a team that's been good for a bunch of years and comes in the same position that that I've been like, where are the
I've came in the same position.
Runs this analysis. Thank you, Adam. Runs this analysis and comes to the same conclusion. It's sort of like, oh, they're not calling holding flags on the loser teams because it would turn this into a bloodbath. Like,
right.
That makes sense. And like so many conspiracies, it's really usually comes down to like, no, it was like human error. And then the cover up
of course it is
covering up the human error. Like it usually
I would suggest to anybody who's getting in like totally high dudgeon about, officiating, like go, your local high school team, needs refs. Like your local high school league desperately needs officials. Like it's a hard job. Go take a class, go learn how to be a ref, go try to do it, or like be a peewee football ref. You on any given play, it's something like you have to do 53 checks on every play before the ball's snapped. It's just to make sure that the play is legal. And if you miss one of them, you've got dads throwing beer cans at your head. Like it's the most absurd job in the world,
especially if you're in Texas. All right. By the way, Aaron, that was a little while ago, but those Texas fans were throwing beer bottles onto the field, and then apparently afterwards the NCAA, you're like, I know, NCAA said Texas has to find each do their best to find each person who threw one and ban them from life, which I did like that.
I mean, look.
That's a little off topic.
Look,
we don't need to get into that much. What?
It's a pretty standard thing. When I first moved to Seattle, it took me 5 live concerts
to stop throwing beer cans.
to realize that's not something that happens.
Oh
here,
my God. Not every stage has chicken wire in front of it.
We had the best bar in Austin was called Beerland. They had chicken wire nights where you would just play your nasty punk rock and people would just throw as much as they could.
So you're saying that the people that were doing that a week ago or so were just confused that they weren't at their local pub tavern, probably.
No, I'm just saying that's just how you do it.
Okay.
It's just what you do. It's not a big deal.
I'm gonna make you
beer can.
I'm gonna make
We're
you
all
feel
getting
like
rowdy.
Home. Next time I see you,
turn off, bruh.
Next time I see you in person, I'm gonna make you feel at home by chucking a beer can at you. Now
I would start laughing.
You probably would. Hith, so this game, I mean, we are getting into the stage. It reminds me of the classic Chip Kelly teams, you know, where it is getting harder and harder for me to think about this game here this Saturday and not the next one, the playoffs, the champion, you know, like, especially, I mean, when this game legit was, I don't know when technically you would say it was in garbage time, but literally
when Oregon punched in its fifth touchdown to go up 35-3.
I mean, yeah, technically. I mean, in my head though, I'm like, once we were up 21-3, I'm like, this Illinois
the beginning
team,
of the second quarter.
Yeah, I actually had a discussion with Tristan about whether or not it should start there at 28-3. We decided to go to the fifth because otherwise there's not enough data.
I bet
collection. Yeah, I mean, like Oregon was just too explosive, and they just limited Illinois' defense too much. I mean, as it is, he had to combine he couldn't split out run and pass, you know, in this game. I mean, it was sort of, if what you watched in the second half, I mean, basically, before you unmuted me, I was listening to you talk about, you know, that drive in which Derek Harmon, you know, committed the foul that allowed them to continue. You know, you committed an analytical error, which is that you know, it happened because of that penalty. No, it happened because they gave up 3 third downs. Like, you know, if you don't consider that drive to be garbage time, which you should, there is an inevitable let your foot off the gas thing that happens just psychologically to players. It cannot be fought, like, but and so it is entirely appropriate to exclude that, but it's only a little bit, and Oregon still did have the starters in at that point. It's a game of inches. It's a game of fingernails, you know, and basically if you do include like that drive and like a you know, 1 or 2 other third quarter drives, like that's the drive in which Gabriel throws that interception, basically generating interceptions like that also is in my Illinois preview article, where like that's one of the things that they do defensively really well. Like I had a whole section in my article about how they bait and bait quarterbacks into throwing interceptions that look exactly like the one. I mean, there were both the interception that Gabriel threw and the interception that Altmaier threw look exactly like, you know, stuff that's described precisely in my Friday preview article and a bunch of others. Like my Friday preview article was extraordinarily accurate. I mean, they usually are, but anyway, the about Altmaier's throwing motion and about Illinois' the way that they bait guys into things. But anyway, my point is that like Illinois, like those third quarter drives were like they got the extra inch that they needed to convert that down, and they weren't in the first and second half. Right. And it's like, that's the difference. You know, that's, you know, football's a game of inches, you know, like the only difference between them driving the field and getting that touchdown was that on that drive, they were getting the 51%. And in the first half, it was 49%. I mean, I charted that game, and Tristan did too, and his film review article is up, you know, went up this morning, Tuesday morning on Addicted to Quack. There's lots of great film clips of it where it's like, look, man, Oregon's making 49-51% plays in the first half that they're just like, they got by inches. You know, Oregon gets it by an inch and Illinois misses by an inch. And like I don't want to say like, oh, Oregon was lucky. No, they were the better team, but I mean, like, Oregon was pushing their luck on some plays, and like, they just came up on the happy side because they're a better team. But it's like the fact that this was 35-3 at halftime. I mean, it just as easily could have been more like 21-10, and this goes into the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened to line up that like Oregon got the 51% plays that lined up in the first half, and so went to garbage time early and convert. But what you should remember is, look, man, there are some other games that Oregon has played that probably should have or just as easily could have had the same result.
Oh yeah,
in which that didn't happen.
Boise
right?
State, I remember that fumble that with Dylan Gabriel.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's
it's just like
changed.
This was the reason that you're pressing like sim to the end on this game, whereas in other games you were biting your fingernails, is just the play order, right? It's just, you know what I mean by that? It's like, look, in other games where it looked like Oregon was struggling, like, oh my God, why can't they put this team away? And in this game where it's like, oh, shoo, they put this team away early. Oh, they've gotten so much better and they're dominant. I'm telling you, like, I chart this game, the success rates are all the same. It's just their 51% plays stacked up early in this game, and then their 49% plays stacked up in the third quarter, whereas in previous games where they were quote unquote struggling, they had a couple 49% plays that stacked up in the second quarter, and they had to get their 51% plays in the third quarter. It's just play order, man. Like it happens, because it's a game of inches and dice rolls. Like, so what? That's why, analysts just look at success rates. Hey man, like the success rates basically haven't changed since they got their offensive line, fixed for week 3.
Well, I just looked at Noah Whittington blow through.
Okay, there are a couple of things that have changed. Like you're right. Sorry, I should note a few things that are different. Noah Whittington does. I think that there probably were some. I don't think that he was suffering lingering health effects. Like he had okay. In the Colorado game last year, he tore his ACL. Like his ACL straight up blew up. It's the long recovery period. I think that he was probably not suffering lingering health effects. But look, man, when your knees blowed up, you can't practice. And like he probably didn't have the full, strength and conditioning regime, all the practice time and so forth. And so he's probably 6 months behind or 6 weeks or whatever the time frame is. And it wasn't until this game that he looked back to, I'm not saying health wise 100%, but performance wise 100%. Like this was the Noah Whittington that we had been accustomed to seeing, probably just from a performance, practice strength, level. And folks who were running him down, I'm not necessarily saying that the folks who were saying his explosive play rate was lower, were incorrect. They weren't. Like his explosive play rate was about half that of Jordan James. Like Jordan James was pulling about 22% explosive rushing, and Whittington was about 11% explosive rushing. Although their success rates, just their pure efficiency, given the down and distance, was about the same, which a lot of people, couldn't believe whenever I tell them, and I'm like, that's what the computer is for, is recording that data. I swear to God it is. Like people have a hard time remembering rush success rates because they all just sort of blend together in their minds. It's why 10,000 years ago in ancient Sumeria we started recording data on clay tablets. Is you can't trust your squishy brain for repetitive stuff like 5
Dude, Earth
runs.
is only 2,000 years old.
Okay. Anyway, Whittington's success rates had always been as high as Jordan James, but his explosiveness rate hadn't been until now. And so now, hooray. And I'm glad that staff continue to show confidence in him. That was a nice thing. I liked to see Patrick Herbert getting 2 catches a year, a game. That was one of the things that I had said in the offseason, was that I had run the numbers, and they shown that due to the surprise effect, every time they threw him the ball, it was a first down, and that that there was they could maintain the surprise effect, get 2 free first downs a game. If they pushed it to 3, they would probably lose it, but they could probably double it to 2. And what did they do? They doubled it to 2.
Got a big
and
play out of it too,
they got 2. He was averaging 24 yards per target, in this game. And if you watch the Ducks versus them video, what does Will Stein say on his radio headset? That dude's an automatic first down every time we throw him the ball. It's like, hey, that dude listens to my podcasts. I like it.
Hell yeah.
The only third down that they don't convert, the only reason that they punt in this game is they went first, the quasi trick play, the direct snap to Whittington, which they almost got, man. Like Lalulu just doesn't quite get the block on the nose. I kind of thought they should have gone for it on fourth down. I don't know. They're sort of in their own territory, but that's fine. It's probably being greedy. I don't really have criticisms for Will Stein and the play calling in this game.
Yeah, I mean, when things work out so well in the first half, it's kind of like,
yeah.
Do you notice any differences in, like, let's say, like, for Purdue and for this game, maybe for a couple others, in second half play calling when it's like, okay,
I don't have second half play calling charted. I'm sorry.
Or even just like off the top of your head, do you notice, like, is there any bit of that you can tell of let's bring out the playbook of let's be real, this other team ain't coming back. Let's scale it back because there still seems to be deep shots in these second halves where it's just fun, but,
I mean, I'm just looking at it by the
or maybe like the kind of like the speed in which the plays are coming out, the pacing.
Quarter. Okay, so the second half, they have one possession in the third quarter that ends on a they're moving the ball nicely, and then they get a nice 29-yard pass. They get an explosive run for 10-yard run on first down, and then they get a 1-yard run from Lamar. And then it's the 2 incomplete passes to Lowe, which are unfortunate because I thought one of them was a little on Lowe, one was a little on Gabriel. I just remember watching that live. I didn't review the film on that one. So they punted, but I like the confidence they were showing in Lowe. It's interesting that Lowe, of all people, of all the young receivers, because Holden, they've been still kind of holding out for, I think, disciplinary reasons.
He did play in this game, right?
Yeah. And so anyway, it's interesting that Lowe, of all people, they've been playing Jeremiah McClellan. They played a little bit of Dickey in this game, but it's interesting of all the young receivers, Lowe, his blocking has been very good. So then the next drive is, they get a couple of good runs, and then that's the pick, which, like I said, it's like classic Illinois, how they generate picks, the baiting the throw. And then they go into the fourth quarter, and it's not quite clock killer, but it's, let's see 6-2. They throw 4 passes against 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. They throw 4 passes against 12 runs in their final 3 possessions, which is like quasi clock killer. So that does seem like, play calling is shifted. Whereas in the first half, it's much closer to 50-50 run pass split. So that's about it that I could tell you in terms of this team's not coming back. Let's just, let's eat it.
Outside of Lowe, who was like, I think the most visible out there, like, kind of a fresh face we haven't seen before, and like Patrick Herbert, nice to see him again. With Ferguson
Terrence Ferguson, I believe, is still recovering from his appendectomy, so he's seen more Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq is very good. He's really coming into his own.
No joke. Oh my gosh! And then on defense, did you see any like?
One more thing on offense, which is this is the first game where the offensive line, left to right, every single one, play to the Oregon standard in terms of blocking performance. Yeah,
nice.
Really like the line. And that includes, they're because of kind of the weird, unique way that they play. Their linebacker is no good, and they only have one of them. So I never really was worried about their defense stopping Oregon, but I did think that they had, like, I liked their nose tackle and the Florida State transfer they have playing DT number 23 and number 6 respectively. And they had one edge rusher. They had a couple of veteran edge rushers who were nothing special, but they are veterans. They've been playing for a long time. And then one edge rusher who some people think may be drafted into the NFL, number 17, Akas. And so I was curious to see how Oregon was going to hold up against those guys, and basically just those guys were totally absolutely neutralized. I mean, my criticism for Akas in my film review article was that because he's an OLB, Illinois will frequently drop that guy out into coverage and you can exploit the hell out of him, and Oregon did. Will Stein definitely put a big red circle around that guy and around Rosiek, their inside linebacker, for exploitation across the middle of the field. Like that was the other aspect of one of the many of my film review articles that was like, I mean, I don't know, Will Stein obviously doesn't read my film review articles, but like, I'm the stuff I'm seeing on film is simpatico with the stuff he's seeing on film and is exploiting. But anyway, but I was curious to see, hey, is this guy, I think this guy is for real. How is Oregon? How is Connerly and Cornelius? And then sometimes they line that guy up like it's like two fists down. They're always 5 across, but sometimes they have Akas like as the dude who's absolutely at the end. But then sometimes they have that guy as there's another OLB outside of him, and he's like, so it's like OLB, Akas, then the nose tackle, you know what I mean? Okay. So then he might be attacking a guard. So he might be attacking like Harper, or maybe he'll twist around and attack like Alaulu. So it's like, okay, this potentially NFL dude, he might be attacking all 5 of the guy. And in fact, he does. At one point or another, Akas attacks all 5 of the dudes. And the answer is he never gets past any of them. Not once. There's not a single time. There's penetration once or twice by a couple other guys, but they have to do weird stuff like to surprise somebody. Like it's never like when their attack is coming where it's supposed to come from where it's like, my talent is going to beat your talent. No, Oregon's talent beat their talent.
Nice. And did this blowout give you any chances to really appreciate any defensive stars that, like, I think the obvious one is like Sione, like we get to see him and he looked pretty good.
It was nice to see that's garbage time stuff, so I wasn't charting it, but I enjoyed watching that with beer in my hand. The like the during meaningful play, the guys that we've been seeing all year, I think Caldwell, Jamari Caldwell probably had his best game. Derek Harmon obviously is fantastic. Like Oregon's interior edge rush, or excuse me, not interior edge rush, that's a contradiction in terms of the interior pass rush.
Yes.
I might be tempted to say you're
in a safe spot.
Given the depth behind them, like I like Michigan's guys quite a bit, but I think there's a big drop off behind them, and I think Michigan knows it, and so they kind of have to overplay them. And so, I'm choosing my words carefully here. I think the totality of Oregon's capability at the interior defensive line attack may be the best in the conference for that reason. Nice. Like, but both Michigan and Ohio State, like, they really have to stick with the starters, whereas Oregon can rotate in Washington, Green, and some other guys, and there's no drop off. Like they're really, that bumper crop that they took in 2023 and then played the hell out of those guys. Like, it's really paying off.
Hell yeah. I'm so stoked.
And they're also not taking and I'm not saying they're not losing anything with having lost Birch. That would be a foolish thing to say, but I mean, guys are really stepping up. We're seeing more of Purchase, who had sort of like been a ghost, but like we're seeing more of him. Like we're seeing more of number 56. So more 56, more 17. Both of those guys had sort of disappeared, but they've we earlier in the season, but they're coming back. Obviously Uyunglele and Winston and Tuiati have been studs. The linebacker, the inside linebacker core is what's been really interesting to me, because they're really doing a much heavier rotation than I would have expected at the beginning of the year. I really would have expected at the beginning of the year that it was just going to be Bassa and Jacobs, and that we'd see just a sprinkle, in relief of, Betcher and Jackson. And instead, I might go so far as to say that Betcher and Jackson are the starters, and Bassa and Jacobs are like their third down package guys.
Yeah, honestly, with the amount that you see like Betcher on the field and Jackson, I agree. It seems that's the case. Betcher really sticks out too with the nickel thing. So I mean, I don't know, man.
I mean, it's not quite that. I mean, Jacobs actually sort of is that. Like he's sort of, which actually, frankly, kind of makes sense. The way that he's built, like to sort of make him a third down dude. It's like, well, I know you're gonna pass, and he's like 6'4". Bassa, it's not true. My tongue's in my cheek when I suggest that, but like, it's very interesting. Betcher they're using because he's he's a run plugger. Like somebody on Twitter contacted me and said, suggested like, hey, is Devin Jackson the dude that Flo was supposed to be? And I was like, no, their skill sets are different. The dude who Flo was supposed to be is Bryce Betcher.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
And then in the backfield, this was a really great game for Nico Reed.
Hell yeah. Oh my God. I don't know, man. I'm in love with this team right now. I'm looking at Michigan, obviously, this next week, and you're like, okay, so this Illinois team, I forget, were they on the road against Michigan? Illinois?
Michigan was the host of that game.
Wow. I don't like to do.
Wait, I'm sorry. What game are you talking about?
The Illinois, Michigan.
Illinois was the host of that game. That was the 100 Memorial.
That's right. But still, it's just like, they really, I don't know. And just the more, I'm still somehow nervous to play at Michigan and at Wisconsin when I'm watching these teams, and it truly feels like if we get a lead on either of these teams, there's like a home field and it could get crazy, but it's really hard for me to imagine either of these teams having the passing game to catch up again or to even push the lead. Like, I don't know. I'm trying not.
Which teams are you talking about?
Wisconsin and Michigan. Though, like the quarterback play in for both of them, or just the passing game is just so not there that it's kind of hard for me to.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who talk themselves into lock for Wisconsin. I have not been his biggest fan in the film study that I've done for him. I think he's. I think there's some physical talent there. I mean, that much is clear just from watching 10 seconds of tape on the guy. But he's when I say football IQ, I'm not trying to deride somebody's personhood or I'm sure that guy does real well on his math scores. His football IQ is not real high. He can be baited into dumb throws pretty easily and repeatedly. Like he will, the really high football IQ guys, the guys that you appreciate, the guys that every coach that Justin Herbert has ever had has said, the thing that they love about him the most is that he never makes the same mistake twice, that he will, learn that lesson and lock it down for the rest of his life. And like, I will watch Braden Locke make the same mistake 3 times in the same series. Like, it's just like, dude. Yeah. And like, that's what that Penn State, I'm jumping ahead now, but like that's what Penn State was doing to him. Like, I mean, he was like, and that's what Maryland and there's a bunch of teams I've done some preliminary charting on that team. And I'm just like, this is embarrassing, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me not to just think about, okay, there's 4 more games left.
I mean, that's what I do. Like, you know what I was doing during the second half against Illinois?
What's that? First of all, what beer were you drinking?
I was drinking a 12.4 IPA, of course.
Of course. It's Oregon. Of course.
The second half, I was catching up on the Maryland versus Indiana game. I was charting that, which was like week 4. I'm behind. But I got to get that Indiana film. That's the team that Oregon's going to face in Indianapolis.
I hope so. I hope so. Just because storyline, it'd be so good to be like Oregon, Indiana, just like everyone thought in 2024.
Yeah, the
Big
2
Ten
new
football.
coaches to the Big Ten. They'll just expose how like ripe and rotten this pumpkin is.
No, for freaking real. Like, I won Penn State. Like, Penn State is still a team that's putting it together. But yeah, just watching them, you're like, someone's gonna burst this bubble. It may be this Saturday. But since we're talking so much about other teams, is there anything you'd like to get off your chest about this particular game?
Most of the stuff, no, not most. Literally everything that this preview article that I wrote for Illinois was accurate in every regard. I had a couple of Illinois fans sort of come at me for like, no, Altmaier's throwing mechanics are totally fixed. You don't understand, and
you look like goofy out there sometimes.
And so. No, I don't think he did. I think he looked like how he's always looked, which is that no one's taught him how to throw properly. He's got a strong arm, and so he can throw the short passes. And his offensive coordinator recognized that and made it a short passing offense. But when he occasionally has him throw deep, because you can't totally take the deep throws out of your offense, right? You got to keep the defense honest a bit. But that's when the interception came. And like, I didn't want to totally embarrass him by putting the full video of it, but I took the still frame of
his
when
face zoomed in.
No, of when he's releasing the ball, and it's the most like mechanically improper. His hips are open, his foot is to the side. He doesn't have like his plant foot. It's not his plant foot. He doesn't have his weight on it. His weight's on his back leg. His belly is flat. His shoulder is dipped. It's like everything about his mechanics, and there's no pressure. I mean, Harmon's beating the guy, but there's no pressure on him. There's no it's my job's not to pick on people. I don't sound like I relish it, like haha neener. Like, that's not the point of it. It's just like, no, man, you're wrong. Like, every week I have fans who are like, you're watching film incorrectly, and I'm like, no, I'm not.
Well, the thing I thought was goofy about him was that as soon as we're like applying pressure on him and he starts to scramble, it seemed like his gut reaction was, and now I just throw ball.
Well, hey, look, like, man, like,
dude, you should stop doing that.
What are you gonna do when Jamari Caldwell
slide
300? I'm gonna
slide
for a loss.
Of maniac is coming at you. Everything goes crazy when. Yeah, like, I don't blame anybody for not doing well when the protection breaks down. What I say is problematic is like, how do you perform when you have a clean pocket? And like, that was the issue. That's the fundamental defining limitation of what their passing offense is, that they can't go any farther than 7 yards down the field because like his throwing motion's not corrected, and it was obvious on tape. And like, if you don't have the fundamentals down, you don't have the fundamentals down. And I mean, this is, I guess, here's another thing I guess I'll say to Oregon fans now, which is that like I've seen a lot of Oregon fans. This is like this crazy phenomenon. I don't understand it. It's like fans want to run down their opponent before they play them, and then they want to talk up the opponent like after they play them. You know, like look at this great win they have, and I'm just like, dude, you know, this is the same team on Sunday that they were on Friday. You know, like that's not how analysts approach it. You know, it's just like, look, this. Of course, this team was, you know, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And like, and this is, you know, Illinois, you know, lots of folks want to talk themselves into believing that Illinois was a good team. And what have I been saying for weeks?
Frauds. Shouldn't be top 25.
No, what I've been saying was that Illinois wasn't a good team. They were an average team. And like, that's why all the advanced stats, you know, came in as like they're 45th in F plus, you know, all the charting data that was showing is just like that, you know, they're an average team. They do a couple of things a little better than average. They do a couple of things worse than average. And mostly they just don't beat themselves. You know, they don't commit a lot of stupid mistakes. And when you make stupid mistakes, you know, that they'll pounce on them. And what happened was that as an average team that doesn't make mistakes and pounces on the opponent's mistakes, what happened was they played a bunch of teams that turned out to be inferior to them. You know, like Michigan turned out to be inferior to them because they made a bunch of stupid mistakes and they're a limited one-dimensional offense. Nebraska made a bunch of mistakes and they pounced on them. Kansas is just a straight up bad team. You know, or the other teams that they played turn out to be just straight up bad. And to their credit, but this is the extent of the credit, as an average team playing bad teams, they did what a superior team does to an inferior team. They beat them. And then they went to Autzen Stadium, and Oregon did what a superior team does to an inferior team. They beat them. That's the end of the story. Like, it's not, you know, if anybody wants to construct this as, you know, Illinois was a great team and Oregon is a mega elite, you know, we have never seen anything like this. These are gods among men. Nah, this was, you know, an A team beat a C team. That's what's supposed to happen.
But I mean, it's kind of fun to think maybe they are gods, though.
Maybe they are. We'll find out. We'll find out. We'll find out, Aaron. It was it was a beat down Knots and good day. But now
the weather was beautiful.
Oh my God, it looked beautiful.
And I'll say Aaron did technically get one of his predictions right, but it wasn't actually all that super specific. You said they'd make a big meal out of we all said a bunch of stuff. None of it came true. Except for you said they'd make a big meal out of the adopted brother, Tez Johnson. They did, but that's gonna happen. They did do a little bit more than normal, like I would say. But I mean,
what was mine? I've forgotten already.
Yours.
Oh, I said something about the broadcast. I said something they'd put on costumes.
They dressed like hippies or Prefontaine.
No, they actually just did a nice thing about how beautiful Oregon was.
Yeah.
Which was like actually pretty restrained and charming for CBS, to be honest.
Also, things looked good on CBS. Those cameras, they stepped it up. They looked really good. No, legit.
Hey, man.
Ain't no Pac-12 network. You know what I mean?
You get them again from Michigan.
Oh, hell yeah. Man. Okay, let's get
taking advantage of owning Paramount, I tell you what.
Oh yeah, the juggernaut, the endless money that comes with Paramount Plus.
You get better cameras for the shooting the sunsets over Autzen, baby.
I forgot to count how many Matlock commercials there were because that was my big prediction. I said 5. I think there was like a 1 or 2. But
did I see one? Holy! But it's
maybe not any. Yeah, there's obviously Kathy Bates Matlock. Obviously,
that's right. I saw one.
Which I understand in that universe, the show Matlock with Andy Griffith does exist. So it's not like just a direct sequel. Like the show exists within that show. Pretty cool.
I love it.
Okay. Now let's get into a fan favorite segment. Some say the reason why we're all here. That is right.
Bottom 11.
The Bottom 11. This is the Quack podcast. Oregon Ducks, well, they're always going to be at the very top. Number 1, obviously. However, we're now in the Big Ten, which has 18 teams. So on the very bottom of this Bottom 11, you got to put Washington. at number 18, of course. Yeah. So in between all these
definitely
other
deserve it this week.
They freaking
really
do. They do, man. We'll get into it.
Right.
But in between is these making the rest of the bottom 11. The rest of these 10 would be the 16 schools here. I got them in this order. I threw them all here. It was kind of a weird one to organize this. Top tier still the same. I put Indiana though, number 1. Why not? They embarrassed Washington. Why not put them at the top? Still undefeated, still ranked number 13. There's some real disrespect there at this point. I don't know why is BYU so much higher than Indiana? You know, like I'm not saying Indiana would for sure beat BYU, but it seems a little weird. Miami's so much higher too. I don't know. Penn State, I got them above Ohio State just because Ohio State struggled so damn much with Nebraska. Like, oh man, if we could have lent them one of our QBs for like a quarter, we could be talking about Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship.
Are they missing people?
That's true about like
really.
4 or 5 teams.
Yeah, that is true. Which I freaking love Austin Novosad. I love that he's going out there. It's very clear. I mean, the commentator said it, and it seems like this is the clear storyline for Oregon. It's like Dylan Gabriel, we're trying to redshirt him, and if we really need him, he'll come out. But
apparently so. I disagree with the strategy. I don't understand why they're trying to preserve red shirts in the era of portal and early NFL departures. Apparently, it appears that they're doing something similar with the backup running backs. You know, just why you probably did. You know, you saw Riggs in this game and not Jay Harris.
Yeah,
you know,
that's kind of good for hair. It's funny where it's like not seeing them is now. It's like, well, it's kind of a sign that maybe they're really good.
I suppose I screw red shirts is my attitudes, but you know,
even the commentator, I liked that their discussion that they were having, that he was just like, get rid of the red shirts, like in college.
Oh
football.
Yeah, well that I believe in. Yeah, but
like, what's the point that 4 games that like people? Cam McCormick's on his 18th year of college,
especially because they've walked it back, in so many different ways. You know, it's like, and starting with the conference championship game, it's all off. You know, so it's these first 12 games where you have to select the 8 that you don't play. Like,
that rule is going to take 3 decades to change. The 12 men on the field penalty, that was 24 hours. But at the very bottom here, just throwing in there, I mean, there's a bunch of teams that deserve to be here. Some of them were on bye, but I was still like, you're still heading down there. For example, Purdue. But Northwestern got humiliated. I honestly didn't even watch the goddamn game. Rutgers, I believe they also lost to somebody, maybe lost to USC. Lost to USC. That's right.
Friday.
I was gonna tune into that game. It was the 72-hour horror festival in Eugene, and I was coming back from it, and I was like, okay, should I tune into this? No, it's just a USC win. But you got like Maryland.
Like second row here is just in random order.
Yeah, basic. Well, no, second row, I thought about it a little bit.
You've got Illinois behind teams that they beat. Like, you've got Illinois behind Michigan and Nebraska. They beat those teams.
Yeah,
I think Illinois was Illinois was a bad placement there.
Nah.
I kind of have those 3 down there as the teams that, like, congratulations, you lost, but you're maybe a little more competitive than some people thought. Illinois should be higher up there. Michigan, they did win. They did beat Michigan State. That is their rival.
So mad about this. I think you caught me on this one.
Yes, I did. We'll get into it. And then USC, they won, so why not? Iowa won a lot. Minnesota, that's the one where I'm like, dude, I got to get that elixir of confidence. I got to get that in me, because they boat raced a very bad team in Maryland, but they beat them. They beat them by quite a bit.
Why can't the Terps be awesome? I want them to also be really good.
Well,
maybe I should look into this town. Something's wrong with this town.
Something's wrong with the town, I think. I think it's a cursed town. Yeah, I agree.
Zombie apocalypse, more than likely.
Yeah, Bruins, I think they were on bye as well. Michigan State, again, lost in what? It was actually pretty, like, they started out hot, and then Michigan just kind of showed that they were the more put together team, which is saying something because it's Michigan, and they were at home. And there's a fight at the end, so fun stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, we can get deeper into these games, obviously. Let's start with this Ohio State-Nebraska game. I was helping someone move a giant-ass piece of furniture, so I missed, like, the first quarter and a bit of the second. But that second half was like, okay, this is a low-scoring game. Nebraska's here. I mean, Nebraska does not do well in one-score games, but this is way closer than it looks. And I mean, Raiola he's a freshman, and they just didn't have it. And Ohio State was determined to run the ball when really maybe they should have just been chucking this thing the entire time. But
well, they couldn't set up in the pocket for more than 2 seconds.
Yeah. Can you tell me about this game a little bit more, Hithode? Because, like, obviously we're like, I don't want to play Ohio State again. Like, I would prefer not to. But you know, yeah,
they don't have their left tackle.
Yes, because he got injured against us. Yeah.
Yes, he was injured. And he's out for the season. And the guy they had playing left tackle in this game, he's like, he gets knocked over by defensive backs. Like he's
wow.
And I mean, I tweeted out during the games, just like, you know, I'm not a big fan of Ryan Day. And it's not just the game day management stuff. I think the some of the coaching hires have been foolish. Like, I don't like this Chip Kelly thing, but before that was the offensive line coaching thing. Like he has a bona fide Hall of Fame offensive line coach, Greg Studrawa, who's put like every dude he ever coached in the NFL. Then he has to have like back surgery. So, you know, he's like, can I take 5 minutes off of the recruiting trail? And he's like, no, you're fired. And then he gets Justin Fry from UCLA, like Chip Kelly's dude, who, like, if you are 10 minutes worth of Pac-12 film would have told you that, like, this guy doesn't recruit either, and he doesn't develop. Like, his dudes, you know, suck. And it's just been like, that's why, you know, and as soon as he runs out of Studrawa dudes, like Ohio's offensive line sucks. That he recruited he's recruited 4 offensive linemen in the 3 years that he's been there. That, you know, they're not particularly talented. Simmons, the dude they lost, is a San Diego State transfer. You know, go figure. You know, he's playing a G5 transfer, and his backup, you know, gets knocked over by defensive backs because he, you know, can't develop at all. And it's like, oh, the reason you got rid of your, like, award-winning offensive line coach is he doesn't recruit. Like, and you go get a guy who doesn't recruit either, and you get an offensive coordinator who doesn't recruit. It's like, this doesn't make any sense at all. It's just like, you know, and what do I keep saying about why I spend like 65% of my articles about offensive lines? Like, if you fall into an offensive line hole, it takes you years to get out of it. And
USC,
it's like, it's like, dig up, stupid. You know, like, they're in a hole and they're digging deeper. It's just like, you. This
you'll come out the other side.
The reason why whenever I hear, you know, podcasts, they're like, let's rank the Big Ten coaches, Ryan Day, you know, because he wins a bunch of games and he has a talented roster. And I'm like, that's what you're supposed to do at Ohio State. If you look at the actual, coaching management moves, you know, the stuff they pay you to do that's like above replacement value, it's all negative. And like, it starts with the offensive line. This was the dumbest thing. And this, you know, chicken's coming home to roost, man. Like,
you in the offseason were even saying, like, yeah, Ohio State's O-line last year, like, that was a weakness, like, overall.
6 months ago, I published that article.
Yeah. So, like, you know, outside of this game, they do escape because Nebraska just does not have that. They have the most unclutched gene in their DNA. Like, is who they've been forever. There were so many opportunities.
I posted that in the thread, just like, don't worry, Ohio State fans, as long as this stays a 1-score game with Nebraska.
Yeah.
You know, and then it gets downvoted to hell. And then sure enough,
it's kind of heartbreaking on it. Like, it would be tough to be a Nebraska fan, especially like the hope of this. But so, like, with Ohio State, they have both Penn State and Indiana on the schedule.
Yeah. Ohio State, I mean, like, the road to Indianapolis runs through Columbus.
Yeah, and so like, if you had to put your own money on the line, would you say Ohio State's making the Big Ten championship game?
I mean, they have to be perfect.
Yeah,
They have to be perfect, but whichever team they take out, they take out at the Big Ten championship game. So I don't know.
It's tough. It is. It's an interesting one.
I mean, I would probably favor Ohio State in both games, but like favoring, in each game individually, but favoring them in both games, like that's a different, like the math is different.
Well, I certainly know I would love for them to beat Penn State and lose to Indiana would be the dream. I think that's America's team right now.
I mean, that's the ideal scenario for Oregon.
Yeah. So Penn State,
like of those of the three teams, the team that Oregon would most want to see is Indiana.
I agree too. That's you want the team that's like they're well coached and the starters are doing great.
It's the lowest talent and most incomplete team. That I'm not that's not trying to run down Indiana. It's just of those three teams. No fair-minded observer could look at those three teams and come to any other conclusion than that is the lowest talent team. And the team that has, they have one way of winning games. And yes, they've been winning the games, by a very high margin, because, that way, if they can leverage it as a buzzsaw, but it's one way of winning games. Whereas, the other teams, have tools. I mean, you can make an argument that Penn State is more one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's not though. Well,
let's talk about that Penn State-Wisconsin game.
Okay.
Because Wisconsin came out by the half, it was a low scoring affair. Wisconsin was up.
It just looked like every Penn State. What you're describing really describes like every,
literally them against who else? I'm looking around here. There were so many games that were Illinois, right? That was the other loss. Again, a close game, and then all of a sudden, this Penn State team. Oh, and Drew Aller gets, is sitting on the bench because of injury. But when Wisconsin,
it's so funny. I have a friend of mine's a Penn State fan. I was texting him and I was like, the running joke I've been making with him all season is that they need to bench Aller and put in Prabula. And as soon as he gets injured, I jokingly, gallows humor, it was just like, oh boy, Prabula time, they get a chance at a comeback because they were down at the half, right?
Yeah.
7-10, and then that was exactly what happened.
Oh yeah, it is.
He texted back to me. He's like, quote text, just like, oh my god, I can't believe you called it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened, and what really helped was the pick six in the third quarter. Yeah. And Wisconsin was just never coming back from that. Penn State's D does seem to be damn legit.
Well, but I mean, here's the Aller drives. Here's the first half drives where they have Aller fumble, touchdown, but the touchdown is entirely
Warren.
Warren. Yeah. 4 and out, 6 and out, 4 and out. That's it. They don't have many possessions and they keep ending in empty, and it's like, ugh.
It is,
and then here's the third quarter: 7 and out, 3 and out, 14 play touchdown drive, 9 play touchdown drive, and they have the pick six in between, when the game's basically over. Basically as soon as Locke throws that pick six, it's like,
yeah. Oh, and against USC had a halftime lead against Penn State, didn't they?
Yeah.
It seems to be.
It was big. They had a 14-point lead against Penn State.
It seems to be the script against Penn State is okay, they're going to let you have the first half, but then you're going to make some stupid decisions and they will do enough on offense in the second half where they're going to beat you by a score or two.
Well, the other thing is that even though they're punting, like they're still eating up all this clock. So like their first drive, in which they fumble takes, almost 5 minutes off the clock. Their 4 and out takes 2.5 minutes. Their 6 and out takes 3.5 minutes. Like, they just take the entire play clock the entire time. And so it's like, even though they're not scoring any points, they shorten the game. And so they're basically making it so that all of your possessions have to be high leverage possessions. And I don't know, it just gets in everybody's head. They're just like, we've got to score on this drive because we're only going to have 6 drives, and we screwed up again. How did we let this happen?
Yeah. That's why I'm like, I know, because on paper and on talent, like for a bunch of reasons, Oregon, Indiana, like that's probably the matchup we want. But I do keep thinking, like, if it's Oregon, Penn State, if Penn State's 12-0 and it's 12-0 versus 12-0, I just keep thinking, like, as long as we don't get embarrassed by their pass rush, which I don't think we'd get embarrassed. I think it'd be a challenge, but like, as long as that doesn't happen, like their offense. If we take care of freaking Warren, I don't know what they're doing. Like, legit.
I would, even with whatever the problem is that Ohio State has at, left tackle, Ohio State just has so many more weapons and so many more things they can do to you. Like, I'd much rather face Penn State than Ohio State. And then, Indiana, for as much as, as a buzzsaw, that they can be, Indiana's trying to play Oregon's game.
Yeah.
Like, Indiana is basically again, this is going to sound like an insult. It's really, look at their statistical profile. It's incontrovertible. It is a poor man's version of Oregon. And poor man's version of Oregon has to play like a perfect game against Oregon, committing a bunch of errors in order, you can't poor man Oregon's Oregon, unless, it's the 1% of games in which they're playing perfect and Oregon is playing, sloppy as hell.
Yeah. And if it's in the Big Ten championship, that's in Indianapolis. So like maybe that would, yeah. But I don't think it's insulting it today, because the over-under for Indiana was 5.5 wins. There was a meme of 9 Windiana being the most crazy thing that could happen a year or two ago. Like, they're absolutely fun to watch. Now let's talk about Indiana. And
I had the over. I had way over. I was, my projection had them like at least 8 wins. Like 8 wins is their floor.
It felt like Vegas being like, we know what people are going to vote. Like even a 5.5, people like, I don't know, Indiana making a bowl.
But yeah, just to wrap up the Penn State, you're totally right about Penn State's offense. It's just like, it's embarrassingly like it's Warren and then it's Kotelnicki. They're like sort of quasi trick play oriented, coordinator, just like manufacturing stuff. Just like, oh my God. And then Wisconsin, it's like, I don't really think Wisconsin's defense is that good. I think it's just, Penn State's, offense is bleh. And then like Locke, it's like, if you can't remember what I said about this game, going into it last week, it was that like, if Penn State presents certain vulnerabilities, and especially with what their secondary is, and if potentially their pass rush isn't as good as it was last year, and if Wisconsin's offensive line has actually rounded into shape and is good, and if Wisconsin's passing attack is actually good and Locke is actually a smart, good quarterback, then you'd know it from this game. Like you'd see Wisconsin taking advantage of it.
Yeah,
if on
they
the
would have
other
won.
hand, right? If on like this is exactly the game. Like the good version of Wisconsin. If good version of Wisconsin is not a mirage but is actually real, that they're a key that fits the Penn State lock. Sorry, that was confusing because their quarterback's named Locke. Yeah. Sorry. But Locke's on this side. If on the other hand, Wisconsin is a mirage, then mirages can't turn locks. And what is the outcome of this game? Wisconsin. No. So therefore, my conclusion is Wisconsin is a mirage.
I agree. Mirage is that beautiful oasis you see when you're wasted off very cheap beer. Getting some cheese. I agree. So Michigan. Oh no, let's talk about Indiana, Washington, because this was actually a bit of a closer game for a while. You know, I mean, not really. It was like the middle 8 or like middle 5 minutes. Washington did enough to make it look like, okay, Washington's back in. They did a goal line stand, and then they scored a touchdown.
Indiana's offense took a little while to get going.
Yes,
they had
a backup QB.
Yeah. They like 3 of their first 4 possessions were empty possessions, but they got a pick 6.
Which was very good. I loved seeing that. And like Rodgers, I will say like Rodgers, for everything he's dealing with, I don't think he's like a bad QB. I think he's a pretty decent QB, but I think it's just when you're trying to march down the field in like these chunk by chunk plays and your O-line is not a, incredible O-line or anything, that a lot is on his shoulders. And he's just not good enough to just be pulling things out of his head. He just doesn't have enough around him either. And marching down the field, like it seems like it's very rare.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree that he's pressing the
pick
although,
six is a rough one.
Yeah, although honestly he outperformed Jackson.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think like if Indiana doesn't get Rourke back, they're not making it. They're
not beating Ohio State. I don't think without Rourke.
They can beat Washington because Washington has lots of problems. Which like there's
they were on the road. There. Washington at home seems to be a bit better.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like I watched Jackson last year. He was there, one of the 2 quarterbacks that they were playing last year, and it's like all the same, issues with Jackson, are still present. The thing, if there was a surprise at all in this game, or a thing that I was watching for them, like that Rodgers would press in that sort of situation and make mistakes, not surprising. There's 2 things that I'm interested in about Indiana. Number one is I wanted to see how they would defend Coleman, in their rush defense, because I've often thought that Indiana's rush defense was pretty shaky and could be exploited, and they actually did a pretty good job at containing Coleman. So that's interesting. I actually think this was probably their best rush defense performance of the year, against a very good running back. So that's interesting. Although I also think that was mostly about just destroying Washington's offensive line. Like they've got one good defensive lineman and one good linebacker who were just teeing off on the right guys. And I sort of think that was about like the coaches identified a couple of matchups that really worked, and then Washington didn't have a way to neutralize those things rather than just an overall defensive supremacy. I don't know. I've been trying to pick out matchups for Indiana in anticipation of that game. Yeah. So that's interesting. I'm keeping my eye on that going forward. The other is what Indiana's secondary is like, because they have this cornerback named D'Angelo Ponce. Ponce is interesting because I think he's pretty good in the short game. Like he's got a lot of short area quickness. And you saw it in that arguably the play of the game, which was that pick 6 on the screen pass, like he basically figured it out, anticipated it, and made a short and picked off a screen pass, which you like never see, like Jed Fish. Yeah. Jed Fish even said that in his post-game comments. It's just like, you never see a screen pass get picked off, So the ball's not in the air long enough for that to happen. The cornerback has to have like a brain wave that it's going to happen. He has to jump it. He basically has to abandon his assignment, and make a very high-risk play. And he did, and he went and got it. So that's, cool for him. The thing that's been weird is that when watching him do what cornerbacks you normally ask cornerbacks to do, and they get paid for to do in the NFL, which is go run down the sideline, keep up with the wide receiver for like 50 yards and knock down the deep ball. That dude sucks.
Interesting.
Like he might be the worst cornerback in the Big Ten.
Did he get that second pick too in this game?
I'm not sure.
I forget if it was him. I'll look it up, but yeah, I get what you mean though. Like,
but it's
that
funny
pick
because
six was something
because
anomaly.
like Maryland, like Indiana's played a couple of close games against Northwestern and against Maryland, and the reason that those teams, where it's like the team comes back and almost like and either ties it up or almost times it up against Indiana, and then Indiana has to pull away again. The reasons why in the games that Indiana has played close, that teams have like scored a couple of touchdowns and gotten it close by the middle of the game, every time has been they hit shots against Pons. And so it's funny that he's he's the hero of this game in the short game. And so everybody's like, Pons, the savior. Whereas I was totally prepared to have this whole section on like, what you should do is you should embarrass Pons on the deep ball.
That's very funny. Looking up right
now.
It's
also not.
Pons got that second interception too.
It's also not like totally a contradiction. Cornerbacks can have different, like they can be good in one aspect of the game and bad in other aspects of the game. Like,
well, yeah, in that second interception too, he kind of like batted it up to himself, was able to collect it. Like, it was a good play, but yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This Indiana team, very fun to watch. But I think the reason why so many of us are rooting for them that are not Indiana fans is because, you realize that this is like a streak that is not necessarily normal, that there's some luck involved, but also that it's like a scrappy team, really well coached team. Maybe
I'm rooting for him because I thought it was the best like roster management job that I had seen done. I was like losing my shit over it over the offseason. I was like banging my shoe on the table. Like, this is how you manage a roster. Like, look at how even this is, look at how well he paved in these potholes, how well he distributed the resources. Like, he didn't say, oh, I'm going to put everything in this position and neglect these positions. Like I was, it wasn't like I'm going to take a flyer on all these dudes. I'm going to get all these guys who are like, I was at the G5 level, but all these guys are super, experienced. They have a bunch of statistical production. Then I'm going to get enough of them at each position so that I can afford to find out which ones are going to translate at this level. And there was some sussing out at the beginning of the year of that too. Like, he didn't fall in love with guys and then counterproductively stick with. There's been some rotation which you can find if you. It's like roster management. Like,
and their star quarterback gets injured, backup comes in, they still win the game. Like, yeah, that's pretty dang cool. Let's stick with teams that are on our schedule still. Let's go with Michigan State. I believe I found something better to watch for a lot of the second half, but I was intrigued when Michigan State started hot. But Giles is going to do what he's doing. I mean, I still think Michigan State is overall, especially if they get to a bowl game, which is very possible.
This game was so incredible. Like, I did the film study on this game, of course, because Michigan's Oregon's next opponent. Like, Michigan State should have won this game. Michigan State should have won this game by like 2, maybe 3 scores, and they. Oh my God. Okay. So their opening drive, they drive the field, then they call 3 stupid plays on the goal line. Childs mopes about a stupid pass that he throws on 3rd and 2, takes a delay game penalty. So now they have to kick a field goal. They miss the field goal. They get a touchdown on the next drive because, of course, they do. Like, they call the plays that they're again, they drive the entire field because Michigan's defense, there's ways that you can manipulate them. Then their next drive, he throws a stupid check down on 3rd and 7, like when he's got a wide open receiver, he just biffs it. The next one, actually, Michigan just makes a good play. You can't win them all. Then the next drive, he takes it's garbage time. Like there's 30 seconds left in the game, or left in the half, and rather than just kneeling it out, they're like, let's try to take a deep shot, and he takes a sack for a fumble, so they give up a field goal.
I remember that.
Is way to go, Jonathan. Then the next drive, they finally get give up a touchdown to Michigan on just like the dumbest. It's just like, how are you not stopping this? This is a terrible offense. They settle for a field goal again on the next drive. Like, I could continue on this whole thing. It was just like doing the film study on this was just like, you are giving this game away, you morons. Like,
that sucks. This could have been a like huge win for Michigan for like Jonathan Smith in his first year there. Like, and it's the time to do it. This is like, Michigan's not gonna Michigan's not gonna be down this bad for a while. This is a pretty big year for them being down. It was rough. I was rooting for Michigan State because there's no glory to be had from a win over Michigan now. Like, I think Dan Lanning will go in there and lay on the points, like not treat it quite as much as like Purdue or Illinois. Like, I do think they're looking to blow out last year's national champion and just a true blue blood and the helmet. But I just, it's really hard for my most pessimistic self to even see how Oregon Michigan's gonna be a game. Like,
no, I mean, like they've got two very good defensive tackles in Graham and Grant. They have a very good edge rusher in Stewart, and then they're and actually it's not just Stewart. They have two more who are very good as well. I like one of their linebackers, Barham. The other linebacker, Houseman, makes a mistake on every play. It's astonishing how easily fooled he is. They have some problems in the secondary. Will Johnson, who's like a first-round cornerback, has been fighting an injury all year, and he missed the last game. I'm not sure what his status is. And then a couple of guys that they replaced on the back end have been replaced that they just lost. Like they're less deep in their secondary because of an injury and dude who transferred out. So they've only got two of the four guys who played last year. So it's sort of a they were able to rotate four guys. Now they only have two. They're still not bad. It's just they only have two of them, and then two of the guys, one at the corner and one at the nickel position, are just straight up liabilities. They're two of the worst dudes at their position of any guys at that position in the Big Ten. Just terrible. Like, it's why Washington beat them. It's why Michigan State should have beat them. Like, they just repeatedly would get lit up. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of what I expect to happen.
Just offensively, I just feel like there's quite a few.
Did you see the news about the quarterback? No. Jack Tuttle retired.
Retired?
Yeah, he's retired.
Do you think that's what? Because did he play in this game? He did play in this game, right?
He didn't play in this. They went back to Davis Warren. Davis Warren started the year and threw 6 picks in 2 games.
That's rough.
So they pulled him for Orgy. Orgy can't throw. So now they go back to Warren for this game. And they like very carefully managed him. Like they basically did the same thing with Warren that Barry Lunny at Illinois has been doing with Altmaier, like just limit his ability to throw the types of throws that might get intercepted. And then they have so now they have Orgy is acting like a running back, and then they have Donovan Edwards, who's not a very good running back, throwing a couple of passes. So their running back's their best quarterback, and their quarterback is their best running back.
Yes, that is very true. Like, damn. Okay.
They only have one dude who can catch the ball, who's Colson Loveland. Their tight end. Their wide receivers are like shockingly bad. Like,
I need to. First we can start talking about next teams I want to talk about is definitely Minnesota, Maryland, because Maryland's still on the team. Still on the schedule.
Yeah.
Maryland also looks really, really, really bad. I do like that Minnesota is starting to get some momentum, especially with antidote. Makes it perfect timing. They have not lost a game since taking that antidote of confidence. Maryland is losing confidence every single.
This game was like, this is the game that sort of most Maryland games should have been, in that, and it's just it all just happened in the okay. So here's the wrap on Maryland. Their defense is not great. Their offense is they're basically the problem is their offensive line stinks. They have a couple of really good wide receivers. It's weird. There's a bunch of teams like this in the Big Ten where like the best thing about them is their wide receivers. There's like 5 teams like Illinois was one of them. Michigan State, you can make an argument is one of them. You could make an argument that Indiana is one of them. Where like it's an otherwise average team, but they've got great wide receivers. So anyway, and so basically all of what Maryland is like, well, the offensive line's going to get blowed up. And so the quarterback just on a prayer, heaves it up to the wide receiver. And like 10% of the time, the wide receiver comes down with it and it's like a 60-yard play, like just like you watched Michigan State, right? And so that's what Maryland is. And in this game, and so in other games, it's like, nothing, big pass, nothing, big pass. And in this game, it was nothing, interception, nothing, interception, nothing, interception, So that was it. That was the only difference between the Maryland Minnesota performance and the Maryland versus anybody else performance was that in this game, Minnesota was getting the interceptions. So it goes, Maryland's first interception or first drive, they turn it over on downs, it gets to 4th and 1 and they get stuffed, then it's a 3 and out, then it's an interception for a pick 6, then it's another interception, then it's another 3 and out, then it's a field goal, then they drive for a touchdown on, you guessed it, like 3 different 20+ yard passes. Then they turn it over on downs and they punt. Then, but now the game's over. Like the Minnesota at this point has gotten to like 31-3. And here's the really interesting thing: in garbage time in the 4th quarter, they finally put in MJ Morris, who's the guy. If you remember, Trey Moore and I predicted was going to get the starting job, and he leads 2 touchdown drives. And like it's garbage time. I'm not going to chart it or anything, but it's interesting. Like, I'm really interested to see, I really don't understand, for all the reasons that Trey and I talked about, for why did the staff bring MJ Morris in, with all the eligibility that they've got left, and given, the limitations that Billy Edwards has, if they're not going to start him, and then they don't start him, and then like he looked so much better than Billy Edwards, who's just like, he's that guy's hope and a prayer. And it finally, when he in this game is like, yeah, there's a bunch of interceptions. I don't know, man. They might make the quarterback switch, like, and finally do what they should have been doing from the beginning of the year. Like, I'm really, really interested to see what happens next week.
We want the Terps to be good on this pod. We want.
No, they have the bye. That's right. Oh, that's the thing. That's right. That Maryland has the bye. We don't get to find out what Maryland's going to do until they play Oregon next week or the week after.
Oh, so they're going to switch the quarterback, and all of a sudden, he's just going to go bonkers. And then I got 2 games that, to tell you the truth, I have no interest in them. They went the way that like they're supposed to. Kinda. Iowa's not supposed to score 40 points on anyone, but Northwestern, maybe
was so bad. Like
40-14. Northwestern. It is the only interesting discussion in all this because 40-14 Iowa.
Not only is Northwestern bad, but like a couple of their best defensive players are getting hurt.
Ooh,
so like
and
they're bad, and they can't, and they can't stop stuff.
That's rough. And then and both the favorites of these games were at home. Iowa at home, USC at home. USC beats Rutgers 42-20. The only interesting conversation I have about these is basically when I'm trying to circle who is the actual worst team in the Big Ten. It's probably Northwestern's really putting up a fight, as is Purdue. UCLA, because of recent improvement in a bye, I'm like, maybe they're on that top tier of the bottom, very bottom. But I don't know. That's basically where I'm at, because I'm not ready to give credit to USC for winning against Rutgers at home or Iowa.
I thought it was interesting to watch the USC versus Rutgers game because, well, one thing that I learned watching it is like, because I kept comparing back to my notes and I was like, wait a minute, that's not the guy who on Rutgers defense. I was like, that's not the guy I was expecting to be. That's not the guy I was expecting to be. That's not that. And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, like half of their defensive expected starters are out with injury.
Rough.
And so when I was saying last week, like fire sale on Rutgers, their defense isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Like, oh, turns out that's why.
Poor Rutgers.
And
still doing better than expected. Well, not.
And the second thing is, and this is very Lincoln Riley, is that like he kind of for the first time all year, he was doing the RPO screen offense, which it was interesting because it's not exactly Miller Moss's skill set. Like Miller Moss is a Clay Helton recruit. Like he wasn't recruited by Lincoln Riley to run Lincoln Riley's offense. And so it was sort of understandable that he wasn't doing it that much. Like the power RPO stuff, which has a lot of like immediate swing outs. If the defense presents that look. And Rutgers kept giving them that look, which that's something that I've seen before in the first 2 years of charting USC is that, especially when they're playing a defense for the first time. So like the first time they played Stanford with when Troy Taylor's defensive staff, which all came over from Wisconsin. And there's a couple other examples, like the first time a staff plays Lincoln Riley and they just completely like screw up defending the RPO and they like do not understand what they're supposed to do. And then Riley detects it and is like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. And then here's like the best part of Lincoln Riley is Lincoln Riley's play calling is when he understands, when he sees that your dummy defensive staff doesn't know how to defend that, he will just call the same two plays over and over and over again and put up 40 plus points. I've seen him do it. And I think in like, this will now be the fifth game that I've seen him do it. Yeah, it's what he did. This was another example of the like, oh, you don't understand. You have to keep that DB there and that OLB there and scrape to there. Like it's very easy. Like Notre Dame and a bunch of other teams know the blueprint. It's not that it's very easy, but I mean, you have to do it. He does that to get you out of position so that you can't defend certain other things. But it's like the opening gambit in a chess, move in a chess game. But then it's like, but if you can't defend the opening gambit, then he's like, well, I'll just do that.
I'll just take it to the hoop. Okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. That's basically it, unless you're dying to tell me about
that's it. But I mean, I guess I got to the same spot that you were, but in a little more curious way. Just like, I don't think there's actually a real huge takeaway from this game. Like, USC is back for both the reason that you said, which is this is what you were supposed to do. This is what the team that USC has always been. They just weren't in a close game and Lincoln Riley derped it. Well, yeah, but also 2A, Rutgers has all their defensive dudes out, and 2B, the Rutgers didn't know how to defend Lincoln Riley's RPO scheme, and if you can't do that, then he will just run the same two plays over and over until he scores 40 points.
Fair enough.
Which means if you're like going forward for USC, hell, next week he could be at exactly the same spot that he was against Minnesota and Maryland and so forth when he's losing 3-point games that he should be winning.
I hope he's in the same spot for a decade, and that is leading the USC Trojans. All right, now here we are. You know what time it is.
The picks.
That's right. We got to pick the big bottom, and there seems to be a little bit of a change up because here's where we were last year. It was last week, slowly but surely catching up to hit. Yep. Down by 1 point. Aaron 5 points behind me, 6 behind Hith. Aaron's having to take some, risky picks. Last week he did really well with them, actually. This time not so much. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Looks like Adam.
Adam
got a perfect 8 for 8 last week.
Woo!
That is right. Hiff missed one. It was all came down to that Michigan State Michigan game.
Yeah, you picked that one really well. I'm very impressed that you figured out that I was going to pick Michigan State on that one, even though Michigan was favored in every way. I really. I mean, I frankly still think it was a bad beat.
I mean, like you said, like on paper, Michigan State should have won that game. I watched that game too. It looked like that would have been the game Michigan State beat Michigan. No. Rivalry games.
Yeah, rivalry games. All I can say, man. Like,
but it's
I guess part of my logic was Michigan looks like they've quit, and which like I should have taken into account, like this, like of course they're not going to have quit on this game, like those teams, like they fight on the field, those morons.
Yeah. Like, yes, they did. Speaking of morons, Aaron, you're like this story really quickly.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, they had a kicker, right? So they're playing. It's a close game. The kicker, actually, they do a fake field goal and he runs it in for a score. He lifts up his jersey a little bit. He's got a white shirt under it. It says Trump 2024 MAGA, and he shows it to the camera. And then a couple plays later, he misses a field goal and ultimately they lose. And it made me laugh really hard.
Did he really do that?
Yes, he did. You can see it on TV. Yep. Pretty cool.
I would be like, and okay, you got to sit down now, son. That was.
I mean, it was a cool
that's
fake
not
play.
On my team.
It was a cool trick play. I did like it.
Yeah, great trick play.
Yeah, there you go. Let's get into it. We got some big ones to pick. This is the big one, Aaron. Number 3, Penn State at home. I assume a whiteout, man. Versus
it's the noon game.
Oh my gosh, the noon game versus number 4 Ohio State. This is a big one.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
It's interesting. Ohio State having now fallen 2 positions, struggling to stay in the top 5 as they complete their season. Because of that, I do say they're going to be playing with some extra gumption. And so therefore I will take Ohio State.
I think that's the smart pick. This is really, really actually a pretty tough game to pick because in my head, every single thing is telling me like Ohio State's weakened right now. And and now they're on the road. Penn State, famous, really hostile environment. Penn State is undefeated. They desperately want to beat this team. This is the game you're circling on your calendar. This is all what it's led up to. And their whole recent history has been like, we lose to Ohio State and we lose. We're very good, but we're not quite good enough to beat these teams outside of fluky years, But I've watched this Penn State team and I'm just waiting for someone to burst that bubble.
Yep.
The things they're good at the pass rush, which may be especially effective right now against this Ohio State team. Will Howard looking pretty dang good, actually. Like not Heisman, but looking pretty dang good.
Okay.
They got great receivers. That's like what they got to really probably hang their hat on for this one. Ohio State's defense still solid. Penn State's offense still one man. May have a backup QB in here who may be better than the starting QB. This is a really freaking tough game to pick. So I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going with the higher ranked team. I'm going with the home team. I am in fact going to go with Penn State, though I'm not sure about it. This is actually should be a pretty dang good game. I honestly think so. Hith, who do you got? I'm intrigued who you got in this one.
I have Ohio State.
Oh,
fair enough.
I am concerned because it is simultaneously Ryan Day going up against a top 5 team. So therefore Ryan Day must lose. But it's also James Franklin going up against Ryan Day. And so therefore James Franklin has to lose.
It's like,
so like, I don't know, man, like the universe might implode.
I don't think it's going to be a game where you're like, wow, these look like the top 2 teams in the country. Like, I don't think they're going to look like the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, even if, one of them is. But like,
I think the only reasons that Ohio State, look, man, Ohio State looked mortal in one game for sort of ephemeral reasons and due to one position. And I think it was sort of a surprise to them. There's stuff you can do about that.
Yeah.
Penn State has looked like this.
Yes.
Every game they've ever played.
Yeah. That's very true.
And in every game they've ever played, Ohio State has humiliated them. I think it's just, and on top of that, we don't, if we don't know what Ohio State's left tackle situation is, we don't know what, Penn State's quarterback situation is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, Ohio State's just got way more ways to win than Penn State does. Penn State's path to victory is just much more narrow. Like, I can imagine it. It's not difficult to imagine. It's just way more narrow than Ohio State's is. And Ohio State, it's much more easy to imagine Ohio State patching up or papering over, their, so far one game, vulnerability than Penn State, leopard changing its spots. Which is what they would need to do to beat Ohio State.
That's true. I mean, honestly, I think it'd be, because it's literally the same game I've been seeing on repeat over and over and over. It feels like it would be like, this would need to be a close game. Then Ohio State throws a pick and then does something else stupid, and Penn State just finds themselves in the column.
But what I said, or remember the thing that I was saying earlier about if Wisconsin is for real, they're a key that fits the Penn State lock.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State is definitely that key. The reason that Ohio State beats Penn State every year is that exactly the team that Penn State is built to not beat is what Ohio State is. They're a team that's built to stand up to the pass rush and exploit their terrible secondary. They're a team that's built to take advantage of, hey, you want to make this a low possession game? We'll score on 3/4 of our drives. We're not afraid of your run game because we can stuff the run because we've got really good, defensive linemen. You've only got one, dude that you can throw it to. We can put, guys on that one guy. We can get to the quarterback. Exactly the shape of Penn State's one way to win. Those are ways that Ohio State matches up against. There's one win scenario for Penn State, which is Ohio State can't figure out how to patch up or paper over their offensive line, and B, that Penn State, attacks it, which, shuts down Ohio State's offense. So then C, Penn State can, pull off the boa constrictor routine. It's a narrow path to win.
Mm-hmm.
I can see them doing it. If they win, it'll look like that, and it won't be a surprise, in that sense.
Well, I'm calling it game-winning touchdown, Warren to Warren.
I'm sure Kotelnicki has been spending a year coming up with unique trick plays for this.
Yeah. There's so many teams in this fucking conference that are okay, we need to get 5 yards through the air. Let's construct the most convoluted way to get that. We certainly can't just throw it. We know that's not going to work. All right. Number 24 still ranks. Gotta love, that's respect for Oregon right there. Number 24, Illinois versus Minnesota. I don't know. This is a good one, actually.
Is it?
Who knows? Illinois is at home. No one beats the Fighting Illini at home unless you beat them at home. Purdue almost did, for example.
I mean, in Minnesota is doo-doo, right?
Dude, they drank the elixir of confidence. I don't know what the hell.
Yeah,
That's right.
Minnesota might be okay. Like, actually, that's a good question.
That is the question. Yeah.
I mean, you know what? Let's live dangerous. Give me Minnesota. Let's party.
Aaron, I had this one picked out.
Elixir.
I had this one picked out from the beginning too. I'm rolling with the Minnesota Golden Gophers, baby.
Wow.
I too.
Wow.
These two teams are both kind of similar, as in I'm not horrified of their passing game. Minnesota really, really, really wants to run the ball on you. And they've just had more recent success. And right now they're the underdogs. I don't know. I just like them. It's probably just boiling down to that. I think this is a good enough matchup, honestly. And like Illinois has made their whole season off of beating teams like a Minnesota by just hanging around, as they said, not making too many mistakes and capitalizing other mistakes. But Minnesota lately has been making less mistakes and kind of trying to do the same thing. So and if this works, then I gotta get me that antidote of confidence.
I mean, your
reasoning
is sound,
which may just be like cocaine water. Now that I think about it, that if you were to describe that, it's kind of like the antidote of confidence. Yeah, I'm rolling the boat, baby. Why not? Why not? Hith, who do you got?
I also have Minnesota.
Wow,
interesting. I like that.
I mean, they may be underdogs in that they are not ranked, and Illinois is, but Vegas has them by 3 on the road. Advanced stats. Well, actually, a couple of advanced stats have Illinois, but most of them have Minnesota. And you actually stole my thunder, because that was really where I was going. Like the Illinois basically beats teams on turnover margin. There's literally one team in the actually that's not true. There's 2 that are better than Illinois is on turnover margin, but the top team in the Big Ten in turnover margin per game is Minnesota. That they have gotten 17 turnovers. They have only lost 7. They simply don't make the mistakes that Illinois sort of needs you to make in order for them to win the game. So yeah,
going with those plucky Golden Gophers. I love it. Purdue versus Northwestern. This is a battle for the bottom, my man.
Yeah,
these are 2 bad teams. Northwestern beat up on defense. They're a defensive team. Just got embarrassed by Iowa. Purdue has won, I believe, 1 game. I think.
Yuck.
I'd have to look it up, but pretty sure.
I mean,
it felt like it. I'll tell you that. So, who you got?
I mean, Northwestern seems just abysmal to me. It just vibes bad. Don't drink this water. Or
Purdue 1 win versus Northwestern's 3 wins technically.
Okay, I think Purdue is winning this game.
This has got to be one of the toughest ones, because it's like
it's a 1-point spread in Vegas.
Oh,
is it 1-0?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also the over/under for points. It's truly like the second I'm like, well, that team's not going to win, so I'll go with. I stop myself and I go, well, that team's not going to win. I'll go with. Purdue has more going on for them, and they're at home. That is all I got. That is all I got. So I'm going with Purdue to get their 2nd win of the season. Yeah, they're at home. That's probably enough. And Northwestern, it's like, what is there one single reason that has to do with Northwestern why they would win this game? No. And so that's enough. Yeah, Purdue's got it. Hith, who do you got?
I got Northwestern.
Ooh,
wow.
Ooh.
I mean, the smart thing to do, given is I just pick the same as you.
Yeah, that would be smart.
Like intellectual fidelity.
You're honorable, though. I appreciate
that. I'm not super confident. I can definitely see Purdue winning this game, but like I just think that Purdue's done. Like, and I guess I'll put it this way: I think that Braun's a better coach than Walters is.
Okay.
And I think that in games like this, that's probably what it comes down to.
It's got to be for both of these teams too. Like you're looking for any kind of momentum of any sort that you probably get up a little bit for this game where you're like, we could win this one. Like every week we're going into this being like, let's be real, we can't. We'll try to convince ourselves we can, but we can't. This one is like, we can win this one. We should win this one. Both teams are saying that. So interesting.
I mean, like the other thing is that basically Purdue is eliminated for bowl eligibility.
Yeah.
Northwestern technically isn't. Like they, if they win this game, Michigan and Illinois, which like it's not impossible. I
mean, it's not impossible.
Look, man, like the Illinois game is always weird because it's a rivalry game. Like they actually have a pretty long history. Northwestern has a pretty long history of winning that game when they shouldn't. And then like anybody can beat Michigan.
Apparently,
their fourth game is against Ohio State. I don't really give them credit for that, but like, look, man, like if Northwestern can go to a bowl if they beat Purdue and then they've managed to rally and beat Michigan and Illinois. It's not a completely far-fetched scenario.
Yeah.
But they got to win this game. Like,
honestly,
whereas Purdue's like done,
I hope Northwestern makes a bowl game just to make some FCS team really happy when they blow them out, let's get on to the next one. Michigan versus number 1 Oregon Ducks.
Don't even play around. The Oregon Ducks all day.
Oregon Ducks. I think we're like a 14.5 point favorite on the road against Michigan. Whoo! And guess what? If gun to my head, I had to put money on this game, I'd pick the Ducks. I mean, probably shouldn't, but I just don't know how Michigan scores.
You mean you'd lay the points?
Yeah, I'd lay the point. Like honestly, because I don't know how Michigan scores points in this game more than 14. Honestly, they just ain't it on offense right now. And unless you just completely like lose your mind and let like, oh, there's a 70-yard run, like that's kind of like anomalies are their game plan. Like it's no. Oregon's absolutely gonna blow them out. And I think it's Dan Lanning's gonna see this as an opportunity where it's like, oh, here's another, not that we need it, we're number 1 right now, but here's another statement game we can do against a team that's pretty freaking vulnerable, but more people than normal for a game this lopsided on paper will be watching. So let's put on a show. Hith, you going with Michigan?
No, I've got Oregon. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about Oregon's defense versus Michigan's offense. That they scored at all against Michigan State is kind of astonishing and frankly appalling for Jonathan Smith's squad.
I think it's Michigan.
They had to construct kind of a specialty offense that I think worked only once and against Michigan State. And because it was, it hadn't existed on film before, and I think they did that in a deliberate way because it was the rivalry game and it was like, we got to get this. I just don't. I mean, I'm not going to predict a shutout, but it's just like I cannot imagine that Michigan scores enough to win this game. I understand the line being where it's at, and I understand. I do sort of think this will be a lower scoring game, simply because I don't. even though I think there's lots of different ways that Michigan's defense can be exploited, like I think that they have a number of pieces that are very good. In fact, a couple of pieces I think are the best defensive pieces that they'll see all year. But and in sort of, because the Ohio State game, I think they knew was going to be a heavyweight slugfest. They came out swinging. And they were swinging to the last blow. And so that's why that game was 31-32. Mm-hmm. I think this game, because they know that, it's going to be lower, the Michigan's going to have a lower, offensive output, that I think Oregon is sort of going to be, I think Oregon's probably going to be content with something like 24 points, something like that, and is going to, you know what I mean? Like,
I absolutely agree.
It's a little harder to move the ball, on them. Some of their tools are going to be taken away. Like it just sort of, it's just harder to be like, boy, I don't have as much confidence that on 3rd and 3 I can just run up the gut on this defense. I probably need to figure out something else to do, and I only have so many different tricks that I can do in such scenarios, and so I want to limit them. And so in all those different ways, I just think it's going to be more conservative. I think they're going to be conservative in a lot of different ways. And so I can definitely see this game finishing like 24-10, something like that. And the 10 is like backdoor, it's like 24-3, Oregon calls off the Dogs, and Michigan gets like a fourth quarter touchdown against the backups, something like that.
I absolutely agree with that. Like I think it's gonna feel like a dominant win, but maybe Oregon doesn't hit 30 points. But yeah, they may be down with punting sometimes, where against a different opponent they wouldn't. But because it's like they know.
Yeah, but both on the strategic and the tactical level, I think they're going to be both constrained and more conservative than they would be against Ohio State, even though the sort of defensive profile of Michigan versus Ohio State are pretty similar. I think they were more willing to take risks against Ohio State than they're going to be willing to against Michigan, for reasons that have to do with Michigan's offense.
Yeah, I agree. Michigan State versus still number 13, Indiana. Michigan State coming off of a pretty brutal loss pretty emotional, I'm sure, loss to Michigan, a game that they very much could have won. Now they're at home, and their young QB is taking on an undefeated number 13 Indiana, who may or may not have their starting quarterback. Probably not. Aaron, you feeling upset brewing?
I don't know why, but I don't trust this Indiana. I don't think it's real. I don't know whatever's happening over there, what it is. It doesn't make any sense to me. Michigan State does kind of make sense to me, that they probably are garbage or theoretical. But this game will be won by Michigan State.
Oh,
crazy.
It's probably not the worst upset you've chosen. I could see it happening. If it would take Indiana playing a little below their norm, which, there's long stretches throughout the season in like spurts of games.
They have a lot of empty possessions.
Yeah, they really do. They're not like the most efficient offense you ever seen. It's just that they play really well in tandem, both sides of the ball, where it'll be like, oh, the offense isn't doing very well, but the defense picks, or, like they throw an interception, but then the defense comes out and stops them and forces a punt or something like that. Like, they're just a really well-rounded team, which has made them undefeated and can get going, especially through the air with some really talented receivers. And that alone, the passing game, even with this backup QB, and just being a really well-constructed team, I think will get them the win. But I bet this is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think, but I will be going with Indiana. Yeah, who do you got?
Well, I'm also going with Indiana, but I agree with both of you. Like, there's definitely a very plausible scenario for both, for either a kind of shockingly close win or even a Michigan State upset. Number one, we still don't know what Rourke's status is, and and they really need him to be, the team, the team that they are. Like, there's a reason why they went and got Rourke, and they didn't just say, "Oh, Jackson, we inherited a great quarterback who can run the offense that I want to run." They and also, like, look, I'm watching this Indiana film. Like, specifically some of the vulnerabilities that Indiana has, like Michigan State can exploit some of them. Lynch Adams, their running back, and if Childs isn't, goofball, look, man, Indiana could also blow them out, in the scenario where Childs throws like 3 picks, which that dude can do. There's definitely an Indiana blowout scenario here. But if Childs plays a clean game, and he lights up Indiana's defense, which is also a possibility. Like, I would put pretty much even odds on both of those extreme outcomes. There's like Indiana sweating this and wins by a field goal as a plausible outcome, and there's like Michigan State pulls the shocker as a plausible outcome. I really feel like if anybody's like jaw is dropped about me, shit talking Pawns earlier on the podcast, like tune in and watch the Michigan State game and watch Pawns try to defend like Nick Marsh or Montori Foster. You'll see that guy get cooked. I swear to God.
Ooh, coming off 2 picks, we'll see. Nebraska versus UCLA. Cornhuskers versus the Bruins. Cornhuskers almost beat Ohio State in the horseshoe.
Yep.
At the same time, it was kind of a struggle sesh to watch them not beat Ohio State in the horseshoe. But who do you got? This is against UCLA, a team who's yes, they're coming off a bye, but and a win too. But obviously a little rough.
I started off wanting to put a whole bunch of faith into this guy because he looks like life of the party.
Yep.
Then Nebraska went and failed me, losing a lot, it seemed like. So then I stopped picking them because that seemed like the smart thing to do. But then here we are against UCLA, and I just have to believe Nebraska's good enough to beat the Bruins. And so I'm going to pick Nebraska.
You're picking Nebraska. My heart of heart says go with Nebraska. They're at home. They just at least took it to, against a really good team who's like hurt right now, but still like really good. UCLA, there's not a whole lot of reasons why I should have confidence in them. Their QB plays I don't know, their offense in general is doing a little better. I, for some reason, just for kicks and giggles, am gonna say UCLA on the road against Nebraska. It is a 1-score game, therefore UCLA wins by a field goal. That's what I'm going for.
Adam,
were you gonna pick them? I thought this is a crazy one.
Man, I really hate to do this to you, but I had UCLA too.
Hey, look at that. We got 2 different picks already, so this.
Do we differ on 2?
Yeah.
I know we differed on Northwestern, Purdue. Oh, that's right.
Penn State,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel less bad about this then. Yeah, no. I actually think. I mean, if you recall, at the beginning of the year, I was up on UCLA because I thought, I thought that they had all the skill talent they need to really take it to a bunch of Big Ten defenses that I thought were fraudulent. And And then the beginning of the year happened, and UCLA had significant offensive line problems, so they couldn't actually activate their skill talent. But the other thing that we learned at the beginning of the year was that Nebraska's defense turned out to be frauds. So then UCLA kind of, I don't know, against Rutgers, which I don't know, maybe it's fool's gold because maybe they only performed the way that they did against Rutgers because Rutgers had a bunch of defensive players out. Maybe, Nebraska's defense will light up UCLA's offensive line. They'll go right back to having the same problems that they did in every other game. But I'm going to go with UCLA in this. I'm going to go with, that for the same, but if we're going to note that, then we should also note Nebraska was probably only performing as well as they did against Ohio State because of, exploiting Ohio State's left tackle problem. Mm-hmm. And that there's, probably a bit of fool's gold in that one too. But UCLA has been dealing with that problem longer than Ohio State did. Ohio State was probably surprised by that, and UCLA is not going to be surprised by what their offensive line is. Meanwhile, every time, literally every time Nebraska has played an offense that has any kind of skill talent at all, they've lost. When they played Illinois, and Illinois has good, wide receivers, they've lost. When they played Ohio State has good skill receivers, they've lost. They lost the second half against Colorado, and they only got where they did because of pick six. It
was a close game against Northwestern, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They don't have offensive.
They got absolutely mollywopped by Indiana. It was 14-7 against Rutgers, a team that UCLA beat.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
it was a struggle fest against Purdue, the worst team in the conference. And that's Nebraska for real. That's everything that we know about Nebraska. They don't score points. Right, even against Ohio State, the best game they've played. How many points did they score against Ohio State?
So was it 7? Was it
17?
17. Okay.
They just don't score enough points. And meanwhile, all UCLA has to do is block, and they have all the rest of the tools that they need because Nebraska already on their own, Nebraska has the defense built into it. They play half of your defense for you. They already limit the amount of points that they score. All you have to do is score more than 23 points. And UCLA has all the skill talent that they need. They have the quarterback. They have the skill talent. They just need to be able to block or to figure out, how to do it. And they're set up to beat this team.
They just need to keep it a one-score game. That's it.
And all they need to do is keep it a one-score game, and it's an auto win.
Yeah. Iowa versus Wisconsin. I'm not watching this. Someone will. I'm not watching this shit. Aaron.
I got to watch it, or Wisconsin plays Oregon this year.
Yeah, no, I'm not watching. I'll watch the Oregon-Wisconsin game, but I'm not watching this shit. Aaron, I got a Hawkeye and I got a Badger.
Yep.
Who you taking?
Jeez, I mean, if you're not watching it.
I'm not watching it.
That means that one of these teams is either going to just demolish the other team, or it's going to be such a atrocious, boring game that it's just not worth the energy. I feel like it seems like you must be hinting at the fact that Iowa is going to decimate Wisconsin. But for some reason, I'm going to pick Wisconsin. I don't know.
Okay, you're going with Wisconsin. I agree with you. I think both those things you said were right. I think it's going to be an atrocious game, and I also think one team's going to blow out the other. I think Iowa is going to blow out Wisconsin.
Right.
But still, not look great doing it.
Sure.
That's what I think.
That's what it felt like you were saying.
Yeah, well, thank you. Especially Iowa at home. They're starting to find what works for them. Wisconsin, against better opponents, has just shot themselves in the foot too many times, even when they're up against USC and such. I think Iowa
down.
Even when they're up and down, my man, jump around. I'm going with Iowa. Absolutely. Hey, who do you got?
I have Iowa.
Yeah.
I just think like the matchup between Phil Parker, who's the smartest defensive coordinator in this league, versus Braden Locke, who I think has the lowest football IQ of any of the quarterbacks in this league, is like I was going to set so many traps for that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could get brutal.
And even if
Wisconsin, like the dumbest offensive coordinator in Phil Longo, like
yeah, even if Wisconsin really like, oh, we're getting the kind of play we want, it's gonna be a slow graduate. It's like, okay, Iowa's down, Iowa's down. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Like Iowa's defense is so set up to stop that type of offense too. Just sit back, play cover 2. Force you to march the field and wait for you to make a mistake. Like, oh my God. I mean, you're right. It'll be unwatchable, but it's so set up to beat that. And the other thing is that I was at home. Wisconsin's home road splits are pretty bad. And basically both of these teams are much, much better at home and much worse on the road. So, yeah.
My prediction is by the end of this game, Hythloday will be double fisting Triceratops from Ninkasi just to get through it. All right. Washington versus, holy hell, we're in the Pac-12 again. Washington versus USC. We blew it all up, yet this game still exists. I will say this. There's been some talk I've seen from Pac-12 faithful, and I'm definitely on their side when they were like, I was watching Oregon versus Illinois, and it just didn't feel like it's like, who do I care about Illinois? There's no history between these teams. I'm just looking for the next, and it feels different, not like the Pac-12. And in my head, it's like, I agree with the sentiment, but would that really have made you feel better if it was Oregon versus fucking Arizona? Would that have truly made you feel all warm and bubbly if we blew out Arizona instead? I don't know. But Washington versus USC.
I like it. I like the staff when it's business-like. I don't like the staff when they get emotional, which I think that they have when they've played games against Oregon State
or Washington. Definitely. Oregon State. No, I love that how they seem
even the win last year against Oregon State, they were doing stuff that felt like they were doing stuff that was suboptimal. I can say that, objectively as an analyst, for reasons that felt, this is a subjective opinion, like it was, because of the billboards.
And that scares me for the last game of the season, unless it just means we just beat them 70-14. That'd be pretty cool. Aaron, this is kind of a tough one. Washington's at home. Washington's been better at home. Except for when they lost the Apple Cup.
Yep.
Which technically wasn't home, but was in their city. Versus USC. USC, I wouldn't even say they're on the uptick. It's more like they just won a game that they should.
This is why I tried to take extra time to talk about the Rutgers game, about how maybe, taking way too much about that game.
But they are, so it's basically is Washington the kind of team where USC can go in there and hey, we got talented receivers, we got a pretty good QB, and if we do it quick enough, or if you don't stop this simple thing worth putting in front of you, then we're gonna win. And maybe by a couple scores. Or is Washington, will it be the exact opposite, where Washington's like, hey, we can march down the field, keep it close. Coleman's good. He's going to pound it in. Don't overthink things in the red zone like we typically do this year and look terrible. Washington lost to this. This is something we should be saying every week. Washington lost to the very Rutgers team that USC just demolished. That was a long time ago, but it's still very funny. Also, Washington lost to Montana. I'll just throw that in there. Why not? And they went 0-12 a year. But Aaron, who do you got in this?
I'm gonna back them dogs. I got
backing
Washington.
Them dogs. Okay. I'm not. I think USC is gonna win this. I think USC is gonna win this big, actually. Not big. I shouldn't say that. I actually think it'll be a close game. I think USC will be in the lead. I'll say for the entirety of the game.
Wow.
Washington will keep it close. Like I think USC wins by 10 points, but throughout the game, it's a 1-score game typically. That's why I think USC's got it. I just think they're a more talented team, and even though they're not exactly put together well, they're better put together than Washington is right now. Who do you got, Hith?
I have USC, and I was teasing this pick when I was talking about the USC Rutgers game, and I went on that little rant about when a new defensive staff hasn't played Riley before, they often fall for his RPO play, and then he detects it and then only runs that and scores 40 points, because Washington has a new defensive staff, which has only played NFL games, the Belichick guy, and they don't do that in the NFL. And he's my prediction is that they're going to get run off the field by that. He's going to look buffaloed. There's going to be cuts to him on the sideline, and like his big dumb meat slab face is going to be like, what is happening?
There you go. Okay. I got
when you're watching that game, specifically watch for that RPO swing pass play. You'll recognize it because it's a bunch of passes behind the line of script where it's like, man, that pass just looks like immediately like he's slinging it out, to the sideline. And it'll like happen over and this sounds like the specific prediction for the Oregon game. For this one.
Well, I'm glad you're in that mindset, Hith, because that was, of course, us picking the big bottom, which means we only have one last little segment here, which is super specific predictions. I've got one right off the top of my head here. And I'm back. I got one more. I got one prediction.
Yeah, let's hear this.
I feel like it's a hot one. So when Michigan beat USC, which is again kind of remarkable to think about right now, when they beat Michigan, supposedly they had 32 pass yards. Oh, wow. And that was their fewest in a game since at least 1996. Aaron, to you, I posit this. They will have less pass yards than that.
Wow.
They will have less pass yards than 32 pass yards. That is super specific.
That seems crazy.
That is crazy. Like, maybe that's too far, but that is on the table. I will say that is on the table, especially with Orgy. Like if they're truly like Orgy's QB1 and they're going for like maybe some check downs and then there's picks and then it's a blowout and then they put in a new QB and he throws in a pick and then, like I under 32 passing yards.
Okay. Super specific prediction.
Mm-hmm.
We will. Gosh, this is a tough one. This is a tough one. We're gonna Hithilday, you go, because I still have to think. I don't know what mine's gonna be yet.
Get in touch with the universe, man.
I am. I'm trying to tap it.
Yeah. What about you, Hith?
Oregon in this game will run at some point a fairly standard, option read keep, in which Gabriel keeps it and runs for a decent gain. A play which is fairly standard for Oregon and has been for years. It will be successful because Michigan is dummies. Where both the end will pinch and the linebacker does not scrape. He will also go for the running back. Specifically, it'll be Hausman because he's real dumb or has a low football IQ on this question. He's probably a genius in real life. He goes to Michigan. and went to Nebraska beforehand. So, must be super genius. 2 different Big Ten schools. However, even though this is not the Statue of Liberty play, and in fact, that's not even the Statue of Liberty play, that's the fake Statue of Liberty play. The whole point of the Statue of Liberty play is you hand the ball off. That it was the reverse Statue of Liberty where you then hand it, that you then keep it. Even though this is not the Statue of Liberty play, this will cause the commentators to lose their crap, start yelling the Statue of Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, and then they will run their programmed production package about going back to that game and Dennis Dixon and etc.
Hith nailed it. Hith just nailed it. He's up there. Because I was thinking it'd be fun if we did a Statue of Liberty play. But
or actually, what my specific prediction is? My specific prediction is Oregon will not run the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. But I love that. Yeah,
they will run a play that is not that. It's just some standard option play, but which will cause the commentators to lose their crap and call it that, and they will run a prepared video package about the Statue of Liberty.
Couldn't have nailed it more. That's absolutely exactly what's going to happen. Aaron, take us home.
Okay. Michigan gets the ball first, right?
Okay.
Opening drive. This is where it gets a little foggy.
All right.
But on their opening drive, it is either a sack on the quarterback or a hit on a wide receiver that is so gnarly that it becomes the NCAA hit of the week.
They start doing that. Okay.
That because it's also on the opening drive, it basically is the moment that just completely knocks the wind out of Michigan's sails, and the game is just over.
Just opening drive,
opening drive. I mean, it's going to be one of those deals where if it's the quarterback, he gets leveled.
Yeah.
So intensely, you can hear the sound through the stadium.
Ooh.
Ball loose, recovered by us, and then after that, he's just not mentally checked in anymore.
It's immediate garbage time.
Yeah,
it's still 0-0.
Immediate
garbage time.
And now that dude's afraid to get anywhere close to being hit.
And then a couple of days later, the NCAA will say we are looking into making it illegal to hit someone that hard. We have to stop this rule right away.
Yeah, they're going to look for some infinitesimal small thing to show that it was a illegal hit.
Well, if that
be perfect
or any of those predictions come to fruition, which I actually wrote down this time, so I'll remember, then you know where to find us. The Quack 12 Podcast at Hithladay1 is where you find my friend Hithladay on Twitter. Go over to Addicted to Quack, not crack. It's a different website. Go over to Addicted to Quack. Read and watch and view the wonderful duct tape articles in which we break down, in which you preview these Oregon games coming up. You and Tristan do wonderful work over there. Thanks for hopping on it today.
It's my pleasure. Tristan put up another banger this morning. It's a really great breakdown of the Illinois game.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Enough said. Aaron, I'll see you next week. Go Ducks. We better be winning this one and staying number one. Go Ducks!